Hello, it's Monday, June 16th, and I'm calling the commission work session to order. We have an agenda. I guess we can start though with pledging allegiance. Commissioner Harding, would you lead us?
I would. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Terrific.
And I'd like to make a motion to modify the agenda, please.
Okay.
I would like to add, after approval of agenda, Chair Basavada birthday. I'd like to make a formal motion, please.
Okay, do we have a second? Is there discussion? I have to say that this is a very difficult birthday for me, so, but I really want to get along with the rest of my commission, so I don't oppose this much.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion approved. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we have modified the agenda to have an item C between approval of agenda and Waterfront Center for Chair Basavada's birthday. I guess with that, we can move on to that item.
Great. Well, unfortunately, Pierre had to leave, but Pierre delivered some treats to share. Your partner, Pierre.
Right across the
Pierre was,
street.
they're waving. They had to go on because they were,
They have piano.
yes.
I
but-
see.
But she wanted to make sure that we were celebrating you on your special
Well, thank
day.
you.
And
And
so she brought those to share. with
I'm happy to
everyone.
report that at this commission meeting, there are treats for everybody who's in the room. So.
So happy birthday from your family and from us as a commission.
Very sweet.
from-
Oh
and the
my
port.
goodness, this is fancy.
Fancy.
Okay, do I?
Cover it later.
All right, I will look at this later. Thank you. That was a great agenda item. Please help yourself. That was very sweet. I'll tell you that the 39 and holding thing, you know. But 50, that's a
This
different,
is 5-0.
it is a different,
Oh.
it's a different moment, that's for sure. Best, okay.
Happy
my-
birthday.
I'm glad my best years are ahead of me, Director Smith. And with that, we go to item C, the topic of our work session, which is the waterfront funding.
Take it away?
Yeah,
I'll take it away. Okay. So, I'm gonna go give people just a little bit more time to chew.
Oh, really good.
So this is a continuation from the conversation that we started at the May 19th meeting. My job was to try to synthesize the conversation that the 5 commissioners had, and advance the conversation from that point. So for today's presentation, what I'm really trying to do is discuss what I thought I heard as the areas of agreement that you sort of landed on. I will say this is my attempt at synthesizing. It is never easy to try to synthesize 5 people's opinions and thoughts. If I got it wrong, you know, I mean, I'm doing the best I can on trying to weave together 5 people's thoughts and opinions. I think we've got pretty close. So let me know, and we'll always, can add, modify. So, and then after we go over what I thought was the areas of agreement, it leads into a conversation about what we call sort of project principles. So here's the big 4 that I felt like I heard. The first was, associated with this waterfront center project, it was to explore a public-private model that puts the private partner as the lead developer as opposed to the port as the builder developer. So I didn't hear really anyone say, nope, I think that this should be built exclusively by the port. It sounded like there was pretty clear consensus that if something's going to get built out there, it really should look more like the other models that we have explored, where it's a ground lease model and it gets built. Okay. The second one, we talked about what I called a SOI, a solicitation of interest. That seemed like the preferred recruitment first step, but what we ultimately kind of led to, because we talked about a request for proposals or something in that model, it sounded more like the commission cared less about the actual mechanism, the how, and more about it's the what gets built. How you ultimately get it out to the marketplace and get the interest in it it started to seem like that mechanisms kind of over the course of the conversation kind of declined a little bit. It started big and then you, the five of you more were talking about, but I want to envision this and this in the actual development. The third was a strong commitment to the existing marine related vision. I didn't hear anybody sort of blow that up. Like this really needs to be, we've invested in having a marina there. This should be a complementary, synergistic type of development there.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
So one of the things when I was looking through the pre-stuff was, I don't think any one component of the waterfront center needs to be a particular thing. I think the different pieces need to make a recipe. So I just want to be clear that that doesn't mean every single thing in the building is a marine related vision. It's the overarching.
The theme overarching, I think.
Is complementary, and I don't, not to wordsmith you, but like, I just want to make sure that doesn't pigeonhole us.
No, that's
Cause
fine.
to me, it's the Catalyst project or whatever. And it really is making sure that it's hitting those different points.
Yeah.
Public access, amenity, something marine related, marina.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would say, you know, the different, over the years, the different models that have been examined, there's frankly a lot of square footage out there that you could develop. It would probably be hard if every single thing was exclusively marine related. You're gonna have to, most likely it's gonna have to round it out. But I do appreciate that the thematically, the project has sort of a marine oriented like piece. And then the fourth, and we're gonna get into this, was a desire to have project principles established and utilized to gauge the vision alignment, progress, and success. And so what project principles are 4 or 5 high-level statements that give clarity to the staff, commission, the public, and interested development partners. These were things like public access is a priority here. That would be an example of a principle statement. And I heard a mixture of about 4 or 5 of those, and I'll run some drafts back past you. The project principles envision the desired end state of the project. So how will we articulate what success looks like? It's really kind of, before I can put anything out, try to solicit feedback on it or interest from parties, this is a piece that we've got to show them, this is how we're gonna measure success. And then those principles that we sort of land on, I embed those in marketing materials. They get embedded into the recruitment materials. They get embedded into the submittal requirements. They get embedded into the scoring criteria. So like, you know, if you submit with something and it's clearly misaligned with one of the project principles, it's not going to score well. Am I on track? Does this align with your recollection thus far?
Yes, I just want to go back to the scoring criteria, that it's not everyone it's
Yeah.
like one of them might meet 3 of them and none of the other ones, and the other one has to, so just the way we're setting up the scoring.
Yeah.
Really looking at the layering of
The mix.
the mix.
Yeah.
And like, one thing might be really important from one community perspective and another
Yeah.
thing. Okay.
I think I got that captured in a
Okay.
point in this, but good to continue to reaffirm. So here's where I have, and actually in the cover memo, I had 4. As I was putting this together, I needed to actually end up splitting one in half. And so we ended with 5. And I'll go through kind of what I mean by each of these. So the first was leverage the port's marine identity, history, and infrastructure. Second was support marine operations and growth. Third, enhance community access and tourism. The fourth, in the cover memo, it's kind of combined and I split them out and I'll explain why. But fourth was ensure financial sustainability. And fifth was maintain strategic flexibility. So what I mean on this first one, and you'll see, I'm going to do this on all of these. There's going to be the high level. That's going to be what's in red. The second is a principal statement, gives a little bit more flesh. to the statement, and then I'm gonna be providing a clarity statement, kind of like a plain speak. Some instances, you could even look at those as the inverse statement, or I find that oftentimes I will write in the positive with positive intent, and sometimes clarity can be found in saying it in the negative sometimes. So I'm gonna say them both, they're kind of saying, but it gives, I think it rounds it out a little bit more. So on this one, and on the right, you can see I have the example of, you know, the rendering that was done in 1994. And we have been pretty consistent with all of the communications that we have had for this area. So the principal statement, prioritize water dependent and water related uses that reflect the port's role and investments in marine recreation and align with regulatory requirements. So that clarity is, do not accept proposals that conflict with the existing use and are not aligned with zoning, shoreline master program requirements, or long-range planning. So that's kind of the plain speak, like we're not entertaining something that is wildly divergent from what's already in zoning or comp plan or SMP, things of that nature.
So I feel like I'm beating a dead horse, but I think of like the next commission coming in and reading that.
Okay.
And I just think it's way too focused on water dependent, water related, marine recreation. I don't think there's space there without a jump to get
Sure.
to a restaurant. Like, I can make the argument for a restaurant,
Yeah.
sure, but I think it's so heavy on that it feels
Yeah.
like if I wasn't a part of this conversation, I could get off. Woo.
Well, Commissioner Harding, there are 5 principles he's gonna brief on, so I wonder if we can just be clear that it's not expected that every part of the project hits every principle, because my guess is that the financial sustainability piece in part 4 is what then brings in
Yeah.
other
And
considerations.
It does, thank you. I would say though, like even when you have that one on the right, that image, the first bullet underneath Marina Village is restaurant. So I typically water related is a restaurant. So we can clarify uses, acceptable uses that are water related in our development guidelines that we have, that our commission, their commission approved development guidelines that were last done, I think in 2017. It states all of the kinds of uses that are water related. Restaurant is one of them. So
What are these guys? Now
yeah, we have as a part of our comprehensive scheme of harbor improvements, there's a thing called development guidelines that lists out types of uses that are allowed.
so does it list out luxury condos that are waterfront use?
It does not say luxury condos, no.
All right, just checking, because that would be water dependent, having a waterfront view.
But I-
Pick this up, so this has been planned so many times
Yeah.
that my hope is that it can have enough clarity that we aren't.
So what we can do on that is when we're communicating, I can add clarity that says the majority of which, or a priority for, but not exclusively water dependent. Is that?
If you think it's fine, to me, it doesn't.
I would just say that when this slide came up, I thought, well, that's exactly what Commissioner Harding was talking about.
Yeah.
This is putting us in that.
It's too defined for water
It
dependent.
seems like it to me, but
Okay. Well, if it seems like it to you, then the intention of this is to correct these things today.
and like when I was thinking about this, like Commissioner Vasavada said, a restaurant and a crab or a fish and chips place, like it's the both and. So it's not that we aren't gonna have a nice restaurant, it's that we don't want it only to be things that are expensive. We want it to be things that serve our broad community, like just, you know what I mean? The both and doesn't feel captured to me in that.
Okay.
I do feel differently about this one, Commissioner Harding, mostly because I think I'm getting questions from constituents about us moving this parcel forward separate from the Peninsula Master Planning process. And for me, there are reasons that I'm ready to move forward with this parcel separately than that whole design. And those reasons have to do with the unique water dependence of this parcel right at the marina. So I don't know, Mike, if you can speak to that at all at this moment before we move on to the other factors, kind of why we feel ready
Yeah.
on this parcel to move forward.
I would say that of all of the parcels that you have through various planning from 1994 all the way now, even embedded deeply into city planning, and I'll hit some of those points. This is the one parcel that hasn't changed in terms of its use. For example, let me just move to the next slide. You've heard me reference a thing called the Shoreline Master Program. And I have not explained that to you. I think you're all familiar with zoning, but shoreline master programs are a different thing. They're designed, sorry to read at you, but the Shoreline Master Program is a set of local policies and regulations adopted by the city and approved by the Washington State Department of Ecology. And it's really because we, as a people, feel more strongly about the water or the property closest to the waters. So an interest of all people shall be paramount in the management of those areas of the Puget Sound lying seaward from the line of extreme low tide. Within this area, the city of Olympia will give preference to uses in the following order of preference, which. So you can see in here, it does talk about increased public access to publicly owned areas, increased recreational opportunities for the public in the shoreline. So that's what this piece, it has not only a zoning overlay, it has an extra overlay of this Shoreline Master Program. And this specific stretch is BUD 5C. It's called marine recreation. And these are the uses allowable by the city in this area. So it's already even more narrowly defined. So what it is saying is you can do boating facilities, marinas, launch ramps, boat moorage, maintenance, blah, blah, blah. The second one, water-oriented recreation trails, viewing areas, recreational camping facilities, water access, water-related recreation, active playground. And the third was water-oriented commercial uses. Those are restaurants that are water or taking advantage.
Sundry store.
Right,
that
right.
Caters to boaters.
Both examples.
Yeah. So even if we wanted to say, we don't want to do anything water related with this and blow it all up and reimagine this thing. The city's adopted and now Department of Ecology adopted, we're already pretty constrained within 200 feet of the shoreline. So, but I hear you. I think I can add to this thing that this is the north. We are not going to be proposing uses that do not align with this. I mean, we can't. We would put ourselves into a fight that I don't think would move us forward. This sort of aligns with it. I don't think the way that I'm seeing the things that you guys have talked about, I don't think that we are diverging from those. And we can get clarity from the city as to what they would consider a water-oriented commercial.
And in my mind, part of the reason that we're proceeding is because of the significant taxpayer funds that have been spent on planning that have continued to produce consistent results, which continue to produce the same results as Vision 2050. And so it's a waste of taxpayer funds, in my opinion, because we're gonna get the same answer to the question that we've gotten the 5 other times that we've done this. And so everything is leading to the same, we already have the answer to the question. So re-asking the question to me is a waste of taxpayer funds. That's why I think that proceeding with whatever it is that this commission wants to do, but I don't think we're not gonna get a different answer.
Right. And then building on what Mike pointed out before, if marine recreation is what's specified here, what's not specified is port marine industrial, shoreline residential, urban, right, you know, so. So
Right.
that's also very helpful to understand what marine recreational
It's
is.
telling you what it is and what it isn't. Yeah, good point.
And that then offers some confidence to the public that might be concerned about the building of residential units, that that's not even, it's not.
So maybe it's almost the first principle is,
So that's where I actually, the clarity statement on this,
Right.
we're not diverging
Right.
from what is already
Right.
acknowledged and accepted. That's the North Star.
from the land use planning that has been done by the city of Olympia, as well as all of our
Yes.
taxpayer funded.
Yep.
watering.
Is that?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna move to the next one.
I just think of a world where you're not here and we're not here, and then someone's reading this, and so just making sure that it's something that can be.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that lens, because it's happened.
It has.
We wanted the waterfront center to host the estuarium project when I went back to read
Right.
the news press, right, to understand it.
Right.
So it is helpful.
You're gonna be here till you die.
Yeah. So, the second principle that I feel like I was able to glean out of the conversation was, integrate Swantown Marina offices, enhance boater services, and expand opportunities for marine related businesses. There was something, beyond just the lens of the regulatory environment. There was a business principle associated with, we've made strategic investments. It's the 7th largest marina in Washington state. Use that, leverage that brand, and we have some of our own needs that are going unmet. I even heard things like, boy, there's some recreational stuff that isn't being provided in the area. Like, where can I rent a stand-up paddleboard, or I mean, things of those nature. I heard that. So this was my attempt to, the first slide was the regulatory why. This is more on the market why.
And we're not claiming that this is like driving the urgency, because at the same time, we are looking still for a operational bridge for our marina offices, right?
Yes.
So it's more that they serve as of course, the marina is a tenant in this location, because that's where the marina is.
Yes. I want to do the clarity statement on this, though. A final project that does not incorporate a long-term home for the Swantown Marina offices and expand upon existing marine opportunities would not be considered successful. That's a pretty clear statement.
I like your not statements. Those are cool.
And those,
Yeah, I like it.
is that, are we in agreement on the not statement?
Yeah.
Like, it's not successful if it doesn't incorporate the marina office, because that's a big requirement.
I would agree.
Okay.
So, Commissioner Harding, I heard you say, in relation to this site development, is that there's some connection with tourism,
Yes.
that increasing tourism. Is this the right
Nope,
place?
next one.
Okay, sorry, never mind.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Third one.
Just moving us along.
Yeah. And so this was another one that I feel like I heard pretty clearly from folks. Enhance community access and tourism. So the principal statement I want to test with you is create inclusive public spaces, improve connectivity, and support tourism infrastructure and programming. The sort of not statement on that, projects that feel overtly isolated, limiting in accessibility, and disconnected from tourism objectives are not desired.
Because what if like Evergreen wants to do a marine school thing? That's not tourism, but we would want that if it, you know what I mean? Like, is this on everything?
No,
Okay, just one component.
I would just say as a component.
It feels like these principles apply to the whole thing.
They should provide, and maybe we're thinking about this differently. I feel like what's happening is you're thinking about
Sorry.
individual pieces, and I'm thinking about a 6-acre site.
And I'm thinking about people are gonna pick up these and they're gonna go, oh, nope, it's not meeting tourism objectives, so Can't go
that
here.
individual piece.
Yes,
So like
That's my concerns.
someone has put in a classroom.
Yes.
And how does that get used for tourists? So that individual thing is.
That's my concern.
Well, maybe for a second then procedurally, if we are, I guess we haven't resolved whether we're using a statement of interest or a different mechanism.
Yeah.
But the idea is if a developer's gonna come forward to respond to some kind of request,
Yeah.
they're going to have an overarching plan, correct?
So we'll drive
And
to,
we
yeah.
would be comparing across these objectives, how multiple proposals met them or didn't meet
Yeah.
them.
Yes, and that will be the fifth principle. So
Okay.
let me get into that. And maybe it might address some of the issues.
might,
I
that's-
may need to reorder these, so.
Okay.
And the only, sorry, but I would just say public and or private, because tourism infrastructure and programming could be a restaurant and it could be
Yeah.
something that the EOB put there.
Yeah.
So
Well, for me, there has to be inclusive public space as part of this project.
agreed. So, but I don't think it's only public, so the messaging of that of it needs to include public, but the whole thing doesn't need to be like
Pub-
government agency.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's a mix of public and private uses, but there would be excessive, like, I can go and walk through this site and not have to spend $1. Like, there would be trails, access, maybe a park-like setting at some, like, I think that that's the thing. But then there are places that, yeah, if I wanna go into the restaurant, that's not I gotta follow the basic decorum of going into a restaurant where you go in and you buy food.
Right.
So okay. The reason I want folks to know, and I don't know how much this was actually presented to this commission, the destination master.
It was presented, but as it
Okay.
overall, it hasn't been integrated in any
Okay.
organizations.
So there was a really significant effort by the Experience Olympia and Beyond, our Visitor Convention Bureau, to do this destination master plan. One of the, major initiatives that was identified in there was waterfront activation. And we were listed as the potential project champion and the only project champion. This goal doesn't get done unless we do it, is ultimately what the plan is saying. Now, I think that there's other ways in other areas where there might be, but for the most part, it has placed us sort of front and center. There's more content in there about what tourism would sort of mean. What I would say is, tourism is not only for tourists. That building right there, the farmer's market, serves this community as a community asset for this community. It also happens to be one of the single largest tourism drivers. Good tourism infrastructure supports the people who live there just as equally. It is a true both and.
Mhm.
So Percival Landing is a tourism draw. The Children's Museum is a tourism draw. So I think that that's, when I think of tourism, I am not talking about something that is exclusively and only for people that don't live here. I'm thinking about things that the people that live here are so proud of that whenever some family or friends come to visit, they're taking them there. And that's how I want to frame tourism in this site as well.
And just as a refresher, the Destination Master Plan was not the work of the Experience Olympia and Beyond Board. It was all the jurisdictions, all the tribes. It was private stakeholders. It was vast public process. And this was the synthesis of it.
On to number 4, ensure financial sustainability. The picture on the right, the reason I have this is there's a lot of non-revenue generating public infrastructure that we have. Trails to plazas, some point in time, we need to start generating revenue to offset any new, frankly, it would be nice to offset some of the costs of the existing maintenance that we have for some of these things with some of this new development. So what I thought I heard some consensus around was the idea that we want to pursue development that generates net positive revenue and aligns with the long-term port strategies and plans. Development partners need to have some relevant experience. So this is we are looking for folks that can perform and pay to be able to do this. The sort of inverse statement or clarity statement, revenue to the port through ground leases on this site must cover the costs associated with non-revenue generating expenses like the maintenance of trails, public spaces, event programming, and space for community partners. So if we're going to add community partnerships in here at a lower rate or something along, we've got to have the way to balance that with folks paying full market rate. If we want to continue, like we've started these concerts and these movies, we don't have a great revenue source other than just general revenue. I would love to start tying some of the programming, especially if we're going to advance it and use this land for that. This should be this should be the revenue source for doing those things. So I wanted to just give a little bit of example. So the Westman Mill, which I think is our most current downtown lease that the most recently done one, that one is generating for us $1.81 per square foot that we are leasing. Hearthfire, which is.
Can you just distinguish for anyone who's difference between a land lease, that's the land?
That's just the land and how much they're paying annually.
Because it was privately developed.
Yes, yeah, so the developer is gonna be paying for all of the building, and they own the building, frankly. So they're just renting land from us, and that number goes up every year. So when you buy something, you benefit from appreciation. And at some point in time, you have it paid off and you don't have to pay it anymore. Not with us. When you rent land from us, you pay us rent for as long as that lease is, and it goes up every year. So you're not benefiting from appreciation, you're actually paying for appreciation. So it's a very different model. A lot of places, land leases just are hard to even make work. Usually it only really works when there's a limited supply of land and you're sort of forcing it. There's other ways in which it happens, but it's.
I just want to thank you for going into to that, because I think the public sees that the port owns land and they say, wow, we've got these buildings, you're really, you should be generating tons and tons of money. The way I see this and what you hit on is it's almost like we still have a community land trust. The land is economically working because developers took the risk and they're making profit off those buildings, but they're still in community ownership, the land ultimately. And so I have seen communities struggle to try to set aside land. Ports naturally maintain a land trust for our future.
And the land does come back to us at some point in time. Now, in some instances, it's a long, long ways out. It can go the longest we could go out on an initial deal on properties downtown is 80 years. So, but it does come back to us, or there's even other provisions where it can come back sooner. Anyways, Hearthfire Grill is another example of a waterfront development. That one is at about $1 a square foot. Now it's very different. There's some differences, then there's a reason why that one, it's older. So the deal was created at a point where the property values were just lower. And so it's naturally going to be a little bit lower just because of the time. But also it had a much more constrained footprint. You could only build where the existing building was. And you couldn't really expand much upon it. So it came with conditions. So that would limit the ability, how much revenue you could actually generate from what you build on the site. Site D actually also has some limiting factors. So Site D, it will have a height restriction different than what you have at Westman Mill. Westman Mill could go up to 6 stories. And actually they probably could have gone even higher with some zoning density bonuses. So you can generate more, the taller you can go, the bigger the building, the more revenue you can generate, therefore the more money you can pay the port in rent. On site D, you can only go so high. I think the highest you can go is 3 stories. So you can't do a building like you have at Westman Mill. There's also a setback from the water, so you can't use all of the land. So you may not be leasing some of the land that you can't use. There's also an existing trail that trail's staying. So there's even more property that you couldn't use. Also, there is some parking requirements associated with the marina that will have to be folded in. So I don't know what the price per square foot should be right now for Site D. But it won't be as high as Westman Mill would be my guess. Because you could do more on that site and generate more revenue. The last one, and maybe this is the one that we maybe expand some of the concerns, is this maintain strategic flexibility. And this is the one that didn't make it into the cover memo. But as I was working on building the presentation, there was something that I think needed to be said a little differently. And it is maintain a development approach that balances control, risk, and public benefit, allowing flexibility to incentivize desired outcomes. The clarity statement, we recognize that real estate negotiations that are overly rigid or constrained with too many must-haves or too many no ways can fail to fully materialize. So we've got a lot, to be honest with you, there's a lot of must-haves already on this thing. You know, with just the shoreline master program in itself saying, hey, these are the kinds of uses that you have. When we start adding even more and layering even more, it can constrain what we can actually get done. So I think what you're trying to say is something to the effect of you're going to have to allow for the mix. If somebody's going to make this thing financially pencil, they may have to incorporate some other elements to make this thing. Okay.
Could we give a moment, unless you're getting to just give other commissioners a chance to sort of
Sure.
process this?
Unless
Okay.
I have 2 slides left. Can I just
Okay.
wrap and then we'll get I'll get the sort of deeper. So here's how I view one example of how these things would work. So this is an example of using the principles or some proposed scoring or submittal requirements. On the left-hand side, there's some mandatory criteria. You know, things like adherence to the to prioritized uses in the SMP. You know, like again, we're not going to have something where the whole project is totally devoid of these things. A tenant mix. So the inclusion of Swantown Marina offices, a diversity of marine related businesses, tourism and community amenities. Those are things that we would need to see straight out, very sort of clearly articulated. And some demonstratable experience. You know, what is the development capability or the developer's capability and financial capacity to execute? Like those are non-negotiable. They're going to have to provide that information. On the right, there's criteria that I kind of look at where maybe it's running instead of a yes or no on the left. These are going to run probably more on a spectrum. What is the anchor tenant, economic viability? So give us some revenue projections. I'm not saying if you can't hit this number, it's a no-go. It's gonna probably move on a scale of how much do you think that this would generate? What could you pay? Maybe that's enough for what we need. Who is the sort of anchor tenant or is there an anchor tenant? We did hear in the market study that kind of needs that as a piece. The sort of community impact, public access features like gathering space, trails, or event supports. I don't think we're going to be hard rigid as to what those are, but we need to see like with specificity, like you have to put this plaza in this location. It may be like, how are you doing the thing? And show us that. We can kind of score like, maybe that's not enough, or maybe we want more. Innovation, I did hear, and I didn't know how to fold it specifically into a principle, but things like sustainability features and how we would do that. So managing sea level rise concerns. That kind of folds into a design component. I mean, there is the requirement that the city will have, and they will dictate the minimum threshold for that. But maybe there's some innovative stuff that somebody could fold in, that hey, that's kind of cool, and maybe want to give some bonus points for something like that, or, and then finally, I had this port strategic alignment. What is the potential for tourism alignment and water recreation opportunities? This goes back to some of that business mix of, I think it doesn't have to be everything. But you're gonna get more points with more of the stuff maybe that you're able to fold in or articulate. Does that make okay? So I'm gonna this is the piece I've consolidated with the principles, and I don't have the not statement, but I have the pro statement. So this is the spot where I'm looking for the highest degree of feedback. Am I close? Am I way off? So I will stop talking.
Thank you for your synthesis. I'm gonna start with Commissioner Isle and just go around the room. Do you have a specific question you want to ask?
No, for me, I guess the thing is I'm just looking for reaction. I tried to synthesize the things that I heard. And it's a moment of kind of putting yourself out there of like, did I do it? Did I get it right? And I don't always know. So how close did I get?
And we'll say, to Commissioner Harding's point, the goal is to actually go try to make something actionable. I think the goal is to put out some solicitation of interest or RFP or something with these, whatever is the end result of the principles from the commission as sort of the backbone of that. So. Yeah, that's clarity.
Okay, well, if I can start, then
Yeah.
that'd be great. First off, thanks, Mike. That's a lot of information. You actually, that was a lot of work you've done since the last time we met. So, I think we're on track. I really like most of it. I think when I came in, since our last meeting on this topic, when I came into this meeting today, I was fully prepared to suggest that we separate the Marine Center conversation from the marina, and the management offices and whatever else. And the reason I had come to that conclusion is because, especially now, if we are planning to do a land lease and bring in a private developer, we'll be leasing the land to a developer to put up a building and fill that building. If marina offices go in there, then we're paying, that money is just recycling. And I don't know how that would work. And so that's I think that's really my only issue here is I'm not certain that the marina and this Marine Center now should actually be integrated together. That's my thoughts.
Can I ask a follow-up on that?
Sure.
Yeah. So it's not a must-have for you. If there was a way to fold it in without a significant financial loss on our part, is it a nice to have or is it a don't even bother?
I'd never say don't bother.
Okay.
I'm always happy to hear why we could make it work, and there's actually another thing too related to that is a timing thing. I think we need to be thinking about the marina and the needs of the marina to make sure that they're operating as efficiently as they possibly can. So I'm not sure about the timing of it either. So
Okay.
That's the other reason I bring that.
So if you build this building, you displace the marina, where would you put the marina then?
I don't know.
Cause
I'm just saying, I don't see how the two can be connected with a private developer.
condo it, or, I mean, you want the port to own it? Is that what I'm hearing?
No,
Okay,
not what I said.
So I'm trying to hear.
What I want is for us to make sure we take care of the marina and we make sure the marina is operating at its highest and best efficiency. And if that means separating it from the conversation with the Marine Center, then that's what I'm suggesting. I'm not saying it can't.
Right.
I'm just saying I'm having a hard time understanding how that can all work and even the financial aspect of it, how it's all gonna work.
I would tell you my initial thoughts, and again, this is just Mike Reed, you know, taking a swing at how I think it would ultimately happen is by articulating to an interested development partner that there could be that we could be one of those tenants. So it's one less space that you have to fill. Actually adds some strategic advantage in, you know, it's just 5,000 square feet less I have to worry about. I don't think that there would actually have to be cash outlay. I think that what you would effectively be doing is discount your ground rent for space rent. And there's some sort of an exchange.
Well, and that could work as long as the marina is operating in a manner that it can generate those funds because the port shouldn't be on the hook for that.
Office space. That's the clarity. Thank you.
Montana.
Yes, I would agree with Commissioner Isles' point. That was one of my points here of maybe they should be separate. If we go out with the statement of interest and we ask for proposals, we might need to look at the different alternatives. And I know Director Smith has a few other options that we may be able to use for marina offices over time, and maybe it's not financially viable. And it may also not be financially viable in this climate to even build a building in this moment. So I think looking at that statement of interest and looking at the proposals that we receive and maintaining strategic flexibility is going to be key here. I feel like you did a really great job synthesizing everything, and thank you for that. It's just as we go through the statement of interest or however we decide to proceed with getting these proposals back, it's going to have to be strategic and flexible throughout. And I think the other thing that we need to consider is sea level rise. That's a big one. And I think maybe including that in the innovation point that you had would be a good place to put that, looking for innovators who can help us. Because the site will be affected by sea level. And if we build down a foundational building, you know, we don't know that in 50 years, it's going to be a safe building. So we need to prepare for that. That's all I have.
Thank you. Sanders.
I agree with everyone. No, I do. Thank you so much, Mike, for putting this together. It's a lot of work to synthesize it from a large, bigger policy, huge thing down to, you know, specific pieces of the pie. I have the similar thoughts with Commissioner Isle, you know, about the space for the marina staff, but at the same time, I figured that could just be worked out in the finalized piece of the, you know, finding the right fit. So I'm not too concerned about that return on investment to the port on that. But just to, you know, look at sustainability, flexibility, of course, sea level rise, and everything related to the environment. And just, I think it's great. It looks, yeah, I like it. It just checks all the dots and crosses all the T's and pretty package.
Thank you.
Pretty polished package.
Mr. Sanders.
I'm not married to the marina being in that building, but we are putting this building where the marina is. And so what is the other plan? Because that is critical. In my mind, that was a critical part of this because we're trying to get rid of the portable that is not a good work environment. We're trying to improve the marina office from a tourism perspective. So I'm not like, if there was a plan B that was good, okay. Otherwise, in my mind, we're displacing them and it should be a part of this project. Did you want to say something, Mike?
There's one assumption that I'm not clear on, that I'm still kind of hearing too, is in your minds, is what we're talking about one building? Or is it potentially multiple buildings to accommodate, because the site is this site D, which is actually, that's 6 acres. So we had conversations about our own building, the waterfront center. But we have also had conversations about site D. The waterfront center was intended to be the anchor tenant of a larger scale development. And I didn't put a picture in this presentation, but there was a picture in the last one. Our architects had done 3 potential buildings. So I do think, so that's a piece, because are we all operating on the same assumption? I guess maybe it was a mistake on my part. I was assuming we weren't just talking about the individual waterfront center, but however site D ultimately gets, the full thing gets developed.
In my mind, it's always been the
The singular building.
singular building, but then if we're bringing in, because we've already got at least
Drinks.
yeah, and we've already got
Architectural rendering.
some ideas on that, so. But if you bring in a private developer, it's gonna be
You're gonna do something.
likely gonna be something different, but you know, that's what I've been operating in my mind with the singular building.
Yeah, I've been thinking about the one building as well. That was the visual I was going off of.
I just think
But,
I'm
oh
sorry,
no, I'm sorry. I thought you were done. Go ahead.
I was just thinking for parking too, you know. That's gonna be an issue.
The parking, and then for me, it's the sea level rise again. Sorry to go back to that, but if we put something out here, 1 or 3 buildings, and it's not gonna be here in 50 years, that's not a good investment.
I thought we were talking about starting with the one building, which was a 20 to 30,000 square foot building that previously had port offices and an estuarium in it that had been approved to move forward with. So it has to work with site D overall, but that the first thing on the agenda is this particular size building that had already been approved. There was already market studies happening, and we were picking it back up with, well, who's gonna go in it now that the estuarium isn't going in it and the port's not going in it? And is there an economically feasible way to do it? Yes, we don't wanna own it. That's clear. So it's not that it's limited to build the first building, but that is the first check. That is an executable, actionable item that's already been approved. It's already been studied. It's already been.
Okay.
And I was the only one probably who thought you were bringing it up a level to think of site D holistically. And in doing that and putting it out to a plan for a developer, helping leverage resources, recruit them to help us with our waterfront center and specifically our marina needs. Because we kind of we stopped this work when we saw that the cost of the building could not be sustained by us with public dollars. And so I saw this as a re-envisioned way to broaden out this valuable piece of land and try to recruit resources.
And do you want to say something? Cause I want to talk about that.
Yeah, I was just, Missy, could I have you pull up the PowerPoint presentation from June 6th, or from May 6th, 19th? That you gave last time? Is it possible?
Okay.
I just wanna, there's a couple of, this is critical clarity for me, cause I would have been putting out an RFP or an SOI for a site. And this sounds,
Title was waterfront center, not site D. That's,
Well, this is why we're having the conversation, and this is
Yeah.
good clarity. What I am concerned about is you are not gonna get the level of specificity that you are reflecting in your scoring from, a developer isn't gonna know everything that's gonna go into a building. That they're gonna have an anchor and maybe, and then they're gonna go, and then they're gonna fill in the rest later. And so I think I think setting it up that way, there's this level of discretion that will deter the private sector from applying because there's no certainty. And they won't be able to fully answer the questions. I think it would be better if this group gave you some, like Commissioner Vasavada says, it must have public access. We all agree. The 5 commission says, yep, must have some public access element or X number of square feet of exterior public access or whatever it is. And then there's like, it's really crystal clear because what the development community wants is clarity and certainty. And I think if we do this like scoring, we're gonna decide whether we like your idea. Like, I think it will, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and this was the piece that I think I was failing to maybe articulate better. That's one of the reasons why I thought starting with a solicitation of interest to the tenant mix that could potentially be in there to start, so that when we go out looking for the developer, I'm handing over a stack of, here's some opportunities.
I just think that that's not our job. Like, and just so you know, I'm not making you wrong. You're not saying anything incorrect. We are all having this conversation to figure out the chicken egg of this. And I just think like a developer is gonna get their own tenants. Like, and we can tell them like, we
Yes.
want a restaurant, but if we say, look, here's 5 restaurants and they're like, none of those are financially viable, none of the, like,
Yeah.
that's not our job. We aren't providing a I don't think, and
Okay.
people can disagree with me, but like, I get where you're going with it. But I just think that it's narrowing the funnel too much again. Like, we should tell them what we want, whatever those like, whatever it is, because the discretionary, like, here, I gave you, and people don't apply for solicitations of interest with public agencies, like restaurants are not looking at those.
Commissioner Harding, that's been the tension in this whole conversation because you've been wanting clarity and to go drill down into detail. And I think the goal is to leave the principals with enough flexibility that a developer might respond. And what you're sharing, because you're a professional in the field, is you're worried that that the principles will not be appealing to, or the scoring rubric, if it gets published at the same time, won't recruit anyone to come step forward. And so then I would ask the question, so what? Like, what if we did that? Now the concern would be if it were gamed. So the only person who steps forward with a plan is like making it up and it couldn't actually ever work. And so it's just like a false process. I wouldn't want to do that.
Right.
But if it's just, you put it out and no one's there yet because no one can incorporate those visions, well, then we have information. Or if we put it out and someone's close to there, but this one thing was a stickler, we have more to talk about informed by like a real developer than we started with. So my question to you and Mike, especially as the professionals in this room, anyone else who has insight is, so what if we sought that and a developer didn't come forward, what would happen?
Well, I think there's a difference between the tenants and the developer, and those are two separate, like, are we recruiting a developer or are we recruiting or getting information about tenants? So you have to be clear on what your question is. So if we want to know what tenants are in the market, I just think that's fraught, like, none of the tenants are gonna respond to a maybe I'm wrong. Like, but I think that that's just a mental exercise. It costs taxpayer money. And we did something that no one really, I don't know that the work product really helps the developer, which our end goal is that the developer builds a building that has public access, some tourism, I think you did a great job of outlining that. It's just getting to I think I only want to drill down on what the commission's non-negotiables are. I am more comfortable with the private sector building what the market will bear. I am more comfortable with that. And I recognize that we need to balance that with community amenities or community interests. But when the public sector tries to tell the private sector how to do its job, you end up getting nothing, is my concern. Like, versus telling the private sector what we want, what the community wants, and then just letting them do it. So what to your question is we spend time, energy, and money on something that doesn't do anything. That's just a waste of, and if that's okay, there's more public planning that's necessary based on the public trusts us. So if that's what we want to do, that's fine. We can put out a solicitation of interest and see who replies, and you can spend a bunch of time talking to the local businesses and see if you, people will talk to you. You have a great reputation, like, you know, you want El Cidio and Chicory, and you can go I don't know that that's a good use of your time. But if if everyone wants that to happen,
Yeah, and I wouldn't really feel comfortable with you going out and just finding business after business, saying, you wanna come join our development, that doesn't really make sense, but putting out some kind of statement. But it sounds like we have to put that out to developers or tenants, one or the other, it can't quite be both in that statement of interest.
I have not had developers approach me with this property. I have had individual restaurateurs that would like space in this building, but they do not build buildings.
and the developer has to tell them what the terms are so that they can determine whether it's viable. And that's where I think generating interest from all the, because I agree, I have lots of people who've told me they want to go out there.
Yeah.
But like,
How
how much is it gonna cost? How long is it gonna take? When are you gonna deliver the building? The only person who can answer that question is the developer. So the developer is the one who gives the necessary information to, like, that's what my job is filtering through, like, oh, this isn't gonna work for you. Your budget is $400 and this is $2,000. It's not that you don't have a good idea, but like, it's the same reason we didn't put our port off. Well, that's a whole nother conversation, but.
To me, that, so it's. If we do not want to play in the space of identifying or even providing a list of prospective tenants, because ultimately it will be the developer. I think there's clarity that needs to be known amongst the table. We will not play a role in what business goes in. Like, even an introductory role. It's the developer, hey, it's their building, they will own it, they will pick who ultimately goes in there. And that's how it's done. I still want to get a little clarity. This is ultimately the image that I have been working off of. The waterfront center is only one of the 3 buildings. Am I only going out with the opportunity to build one building? Or are we going out with, this has been contemplated, this was contemplated, this is 3 buildings and was contemplated, that's 4 buildings and was contemplated? Am I taking the ability to build one building, or am I taking out these concepts? I don't.
What we had previously been working on was us building one building, us, the port.
Yeah.
Now we're talking about going out to the private sector in some form or fashion. So it could be either of those. I personally don't, I mean, you probably get different people depending on which one you do. I don't have a strong preference. I just thought we were looking at one building because that was the one thing that we all had agreed on. And it was like, gonna actually, we need a marina office, we need public amenity, we need catalyst, we need tourism, but if you think that it's better to go out with the campus, like if you think that will yield the best market, you know, like, I don't disagree, I could see what you were saying and like, that's reasonable.
It's just a scale question.
Right.
I mean, my take is the waterfront center as a building, it got blown up conceptually the second we said we're not a tenant. So it's the waterfront center thing gone. Because we're not in it. We're the anchor tenant.
Well, and if that's the case, then maybe this is a moot conversation and we just go back to the whole peninsula master planning. Because if you're talking about master planning that entire site and going, that's a broader conversation than I think. Well, I don't think in my mind it was blown up. In my mind, it was like, we were doing the market study that Commissioner Tong had suggested, which we did, which
Yeah.
maybe we could continue to refine some of that, but if we're looking at that many buildings, I don't know how we do that quickly or
Yeah, I would agree. I don't know how we could do that quickly. It's not exactly what I was thinking before, and I've definitely changed my perspective on one building or maybe no permanent buildings based on the sea level rise predictions for this site. It's not seeming to last more than 50 to 75 years. So what is,
So are you thinking that we won't ever build anything there?
maybe we could put like something manufactured, like a small marina office there and make it some kind of hub, but a permanent restaurant or large building doesn't really seem feasible with sea level rise.
My understanding from being Maggie's alternate on the Sea Level Rise Committee is that, and Commissioner Sanders, maybe you want to speak to it as well, is that the city of Olympia has not made a plan for managed retreat. They are currently planning and making investments for downtown that would last the 50 years. 50-year horizon, and most buildings actually today at 50, you know, there's significant reinvestment or they come down, and it's not, 50 years is a decent planning scale for any kind of capital investment in the building. For me, I see the marina as a critical anchor tenant here still. I could see a segmented, you put out the plan for the campus, you ask people to meet key milestones, at which point you can decide, have the option to continue together or separate. Because we learned when we visited Port of Bellingham and Everett, that there have been some issues when you put out a big development, like making sure you have enough people who can respond and that it's going well and that you don't get sucked into litigation if it's not meeting milestones. But that first milestone would be the building that has the marina offices. Like you would have some urgency to when that's completed and some terms up front of the expectation of what you're going to be effectively, by whatever mechanism, paying per square foot for that building. Commissioner Sanders, I've heard you breathe.
Oh, I was thinking about sea level rise and wondering if, even if we did, look at, a waterfront center that could jumpstart the sea level rise for the marina, because there's gonna be needing, all the docks are gonna need to be replaced, and that could be a catalyst to look at sea level rise.
Because sea level rise mitigation is adaptation to your point,
Yes.
right? And I think the port is not going to be investing in this building, which helps us to have confidence that the private development community has confidence that the sea level rise mitigation is going to preserve their investment. And meet the requirements of all of those who know more about sea level rise than us. So I agree with you. I think it could be a catalyst for additional improvements to the shoreline, to the building.
I would agree. And I definitely say that I'm not saying nothing on that side. I think activating our trails, our parks, getting some waterfront recreation going in any way that we could use that to capitalize financially. I don't know. That's a big business, but renting canoes, the stand-up paddle boards that were mentioned, things like that, and then providing other services to the marina customers. And then maybe even a shuttle into downtown, just thinking of creative, innovative ways that I guess we're looking for the tenant or the developer to bring those in.
Amphitheater, water park.
We certainly hear a lot of calls for all those things, Commissioner Montano, but we haven't figured out the financial sustainability piece for that without allowing also some more profitable enterprises.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, we are absorbing a pretty large, just the amount of already pre-existing public amenity and park-like spaces here, the amount of just landscaping that we're doing. There isn't a marina in Thurston County that has this level of park-like feature and amenity. And so we're putting that expense on a business line that it's tight margins. And so if you want to continue to have those kinds of more public amenity, public access thing, I'm just predicting we're going to need things that will pay the freight of not only existing stuff, but if you want more, if we want an amphitheater in and of itself is not gonna pay for its development and maintenance.
And I guess that is why I personally saw this as an opportunity of generating revenue with a commercial building by going out to the private sector and saying, and maybe we get no responses. Maybe they go, no, doesn't make sense, doesn't pencil out. But if the private sector says, yes, I'm willing to invest, I'm willing to mitigate for sea level rise, I'm willing to create public access, and I think I can get a restaurant, I think whatever, then we start generating money and traffic on the site. And then somebody builds another one and somebody like, so if, do you think with this conversation that it's worth moving forward with one building? Or do you think we just table this whole thing?
I think that this concept of campus-like thing has always been the concept for this piece of property. I don't think it has largely deviated. What the destination waterfront or what the waterfront center concept was, not only is the way I interpret it, we like this idea and we like it so much, we'll put chips in first for our own building. And then that idea, we found out didn't work for us because we got our own building. So now if you want to move forward,
No, it was because the cost per square foot was too much.
too much for us.
Without a plan for how it had nothing to do with getting our own building, the decision to not move forward.
Well, fair. I would say that now that having our own building definitely says, don't do that too. I mean, it didn't pencil for us to build and now there's no need for us to build either.
There is, the marina offices have to be at the marina.
Okay.
Not our whole administration.
Yeah, I guess this was contemplating, this was from Destination Waterfront, contemplating full port administrative
Right.
offices. So I'm sorry, I'm getting the vernacular
Oh, you're.
incorrect. We don't need 15,000 square
Right.
feet of office space. We're not going to be building it. This was contemplating uh
26, right?
for one of the buildings, and then another building and another building. And so was this. So was this. So that I am,
So what if it's, I think it was Commissioner Masavada who said, like, what if you go out for the whole site with the first building with a kill switch of like, that you can terminate your, like, that we have some discretion after the first building. Obviously, that needs to be reasonable, but is that?
well, I think that there are real questions about is there even a market right now to, even from a private sector standpoint, is there a reasonable, credible, financially capable, with demonstratable experience developer who's going to build 3 buildings at a total of potentially 60,000 square feet of building space, because that's kind of what you could do with 2 stories, and have a significant portion of it be water-oriented commercial use. I'll be as blunt as I possibly, I have no idea if there's actually that much market demand. And it may be, hey, we have a if we go out to the market and somebody says, yeah, I could do 3 buildings and here's what they would be and here's how they align, I think we would evaluate that. If somebody says, look, guys, you're nuts. 3 buildings right now, a total of 60,000, I could do 1. And I want the ability to have the opportunity to do a second one if this one works. That's probably the response that we get. But I mean, we're not marketing this property at all right now. No one, other than what people have sort of gleaned or heard, or just the occasional unsolicited, hey, I'd love a restaurant over there. But it's not on the market.
Well, and I think that's, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I think that was the intent, was that we could create something actionable that was on the market of a 20 to 30,000 square foot building that would potentially be a small enough bite that someone could execute on it. And that, I think, is what we were thinking. Like it would, but because no, there's not a market for 60,000 square feet of spec. There's absolutely not. So is there a market for 20 to 30 if you have an anchor tenant and maybe? Yeah, probably. Like, but. So I guess the question is, do you want to move forward with one building? Or should we just table this whole conversation?
Or is there a hybrid of moving forward with sort of the potential of the one building as a sort of definite? That's what we want to know. Are you interested in that? But with sort of the potential for building out the campus as well.
I,
I would just like to say, I think Mike just hit it on the head. We don't know. We don't know if there's any interest at all. We don't know if any developers are gonna come to us but we've got a canvas here if somebody wants to, you know, take that step, but they're gonna be the ones that tell us whether or not, because they're gonna know what their costs are gonna be to build it and what they need in return. They're gonna know, you know, whether they build a 50-year building or a 100-year building or whatever that is. They're gonna make that determination, or they're just not gonna want to participate. So without knowing any interest, I don't know how we can set a firm, so this is the parameters, this is what we want you to work in. I mean, I think you're setting some guidelines with your 5 points, and that's good, but I mean, until we hear back from some folks, then I don't know how we can.
But what's the next step then? We're in purgatory. Like because we have to go out with something, right?
So, yeah, I mean, so put out for this solicitation of interest, and I mean, just say, okay, this is what we've been thinking about, this waterfront center. And then if there's interest in that, then fine. They may come in and say, well, we'd love to do that waterfront center, but then in 5 years, we want to do another building there too.
Only if we can do 2 more.
Yeah,
And that's
exactly.
for developers and tenants, essentially.
I'm thinking developers. That's what I'm
If
thinking.
there's such thing as a solicitation of interest for developers, so it's an even lower threshold to kind of throw your hat in.
I don't know if I'd call it a solicitation of interest. I'd probably call that actually a request for proposals or a request for qualifications. You can write it I would actually probably do that one as a request for qualifications, and I would make it incredibly simple to respond to. And I think you'd have to be very honest with those that we don't know what the market is out there. And this is our attempt to understand market interest, market demand, and potential viability. And we just collect that first. I mean, it would have to be, literally, somebody would need to be able to respond to that, put a response package together in a day. I mean,
An hour.
in probably an hour.
I mean, but that's fine if that's the next step.
Well, so I think there's a principle that was missing here that this is reminding me, for me, which may not be for everyone, but you know, I could bike down from where I live with my pedaling. The trip back up is a little harder. Olympia, a middle school parent recently told me that the city of Olympia partnered to do this incredible scavenger hunt. Where the kids came
Oh,
down
the Reeves one.
and they went
Yes.
to different stores, and there was like interaction was necessary. So parents were thrilled because kids had to, like, teenagers had to talk to grownups. And part of what this did was show people our downtown, right? Because we have had incredible opportunities in our downtown, but they are underutilized. And I'm bringing up the story because another principle for me, and remember when we went to talk to the Downtown Association, is that what we're doing has to add to and not pull from or detract from downtown. So we're having this conversation at a moment when there is a lot of commercial vacancy. And it's like what Mike is helping position for us is that this is a different kind of commercial. And it's not a different kind of commercial just because it has better views, because then I'd say you're pulling from other places, but because of the tourism dependent sort of connections it can have. And so I think for me, seeing if anyone has a vision to participate with that nexus to tourism is a real important thing for me to see that we're addressing helping Olympia be and the area be the best it can be and punch above its weight, but not driving more vacancies. And so sorry to add that now, but I think that's the reason I'd like to go out to ask and see what the vision is. But I don't know for sure that any private sector led development, I wouldn't just say I'd do anything because we want to make sure we're not detracting from existing buildings downtown.
So as a next step, what if it's a very simple respond in 1 to 2 hours RFP that you can put out to everyone, and you could target the people in town that you know do stuff and then see what people say?
I think it would at least give us an indicator of market level interest. I am concerned right now that that the pool is probably a little shallower than it was a few years ago. With market uncertainties, with sort of just tightening up, disposable income feels like it's going down for individuals. This is, by its nature, a disposable income related amenity. I mean, it's tourism, water recreation. These are things that when things get real tight, people may not do as much of. And so but I don't know, these are educated hunches on my part.
But also making counter-cyclical construction investments is something we're more capable to do as a public sector entity, and it can help with, workforce and money in the community when times are tough. So I think we have an interesting role here, interesting times ahead. And I guess my preference is also that we would move ahead and see what's out there.
So let me see if I'm getting consensus. Go out with a market test. Simple.
What Commissioner Montano already kind of asked for last time, like before you were here.
I would say there's something different between a market study
And a market
and a
test.
market test. A market study is an academic adventure, is an academic exercise in somebody interviewing and doing data crunch. A market test is, we have a piece of property here. You build properties, would you build here? If this is really on the market, we may really pull a trigger on here. But we're gonna not talk to, I'm not talking to somebody who's gonna do an analysis. I wanna talk to people that build walls, roofs, and foundations.
So to do that, are we ruling out multifamily?
I don't think, is it allowed in the shoreline master program?
We'd have to clarify that. I think it's pretty hard to put
But I
it.
just think if we can say with consensus, we're not doing multifamily, you will exclude a large number of the developers that you don't want wasting time on it.
Yeah.
So, yes? Okay,
What
so.
about vacation units?
I'm
Your
fine
thoughts
with
there?
that.
That's connected with the tourism.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
So yes on that. Hotel, like lodging. I don't feel like that needs to be ruled out at this stage. I feel like multifamily is the only thing that needs to be ruled out.
And it's also not industrial.
Right. It's not industrial and it's not multifamily, so that can be on the face, need not apply in no universe.
Okay.
Because then we're
That's a
not
good
wasting,
statement.
because I think our market study went in a direction that we weren't gonna do, so like, I think.
It's good clarity.
Are we ready to wrap this portion of the conversation?
I think so. So here's what I have, what sounds like to me is a consensus to do a simple sort of real market test. You're willing to entertain interested offers from capable folks, but we want to collect all of them first and sort of see how that looks and feels. And then we'll make sort of a decision from there.
And looking at the work that's been done, would they require us to offer them the whole campus? Would they be willing to move forward with one building? And we need to understand that that's a critical piece so that we can understand how we're gonna frame it when we do go to RFP. if every single one of them says zero interest in one building, only want to do the campus, that's informative. If they say,
When we did the East Bay redevelopment project years and years ago, in 2009, we first did a request for qualifications, simpler form. Then we evaluated that and we invited, I think it was 3 people. So I want to say 5 or 6 actually responded to the RFQ. A couple of those responses were like, you may technically be qualified, what you're qualified to do, housing or whatever it may be, isn't really actually what we're looking for. We're not gonna advance you to the proposal stage and you narrow from there. I mean, you can use a narrowing tool.
call it whatever you want. You want more information.
Okay.
And I think it just gives the community breaks that they can also give feedback more specific to the project, which I know.
People will want.
And I would just say that we have gotten a lot of feedback from Vision 2050 and Destination Master Plan from the broad community. So as we're moving forward with those kind of uses, referring back to that, because 100 community members is different than the thousands that were a part of those processes.
I think what's implicit in staff's recommendation and explicit, Mike, you talked about kind of how we're maintaining a lot of assets here without a lot of revenues. The challenge is that is still an intuitive conversation because hopefully by this summer, when we get the marina update, like we know we're mapping the need for capital reinvestment, but we kind of know there's something big looming, but it's not enough to sort of help inform this kind of decision right now. Because I think probably if we could fast forward and have that information, you'd see people as a whole, we'd be more eager as a whole port to say, oh gosh, we have to activate something because we're invested in what we currently offer and in not having to like give up all the open space we're maintaining and the trails and the marina opportunities for all. And we really want to get a kayak launch and we really want to help the community have more access for the schools, all of those things. Right now, we haven't connected that financially to what this looks like.
The capital maintenance plan is gonna do that for us.
So I would just say that would really help with this conversation.
Okay. I think I have what I need to take a next step. I will continue to work with you.
Then I would like to take a brief recess so that people can use facilities if they need to, and then we'll come back and close with the agenda. So we'll come back in 5 minutes. It's 5:31. We'll be back at 5:36. Eddie?
So I'll just quickly identify what's coming up, and if there are things that commissioners would like to see and discuss in the near term, we're happy to put it on the agenda. So June 20th is a candidate open house. We have decided it will not be open to the public. And we are asking no more than one other commissioner to come if you would like to come, because we want it to not be open to the public, and the rationale behind that is just it's meant to be an information sharing event and not an opportunity for campaigning, and we thought there would be that risk. So it will be a PowerPoint, a tour for 2 hours, and then from 12 to 1, just a Q&A with board managers and directors. Then June 23rd, we have an executive session. There's litigation we want to discuss with the commission. Pierce Wright wants to discuss and share with you. And then right after that will be a work session on our environmental policies. And we'll have Sean here. He's putting together a presentation and summary of our policies, and all of that will go out to you all well in advance. And then we're kind of low on actual business, apparently. So on July 14th, we are planning a briefing on the foreign trade zone, just so you all know what it is and what the status is of that. And then also on the Olympia Art Space, we are trying to partner with them to do a mural on the warehouse on the
Very
Marine
cool.
Terminal, which is super cool. So we're gonna come and brief you on that. And then we are not having a scheduled work session because the commissioner seminar is happening then, and we want to make sure you have an opportunity to attend that. July 28th, we are planning a briefing on where we are with the HCP, and there will actually be some demonstrable progress by that date for you all to hear about. And then we just thought we'd do a briefing on the Cascade Pulse site for folks in August. So, anything in particular the commission would like us to put on the calendar?
Financial
Yes.
reviews of each business line.
Shoot.
And we said we had Marina was the priority and we
Yes.
got that.
Yeah. But
Sorry,
that-
I thought it was on here, but okay.
I mean, we talked about the starting with the marina, which I think is a good idea, but we need to be looking at each line of business. And just to make a point of it, it's not about the finance department.
Yeah.
Not about the finance department. The finance department, we understand reports, the financials of each line of business. It's about the management of those lines, and not that they're doing a bad job, just so that we all understand where they're going.
And I think to Commissioner Vasava's point, that we need to generate more revenue,
Yeah.
and we need to understand what that looks like.
Yeah.
And that will help us drive our decisions.
Okay.
And if we're not gonna make money over here, then yeah.
Because once we get to the budget, it's just
Yeah.
too much to try to figure that question out, I think, and also approve a budget for the next year.
You're absolutely right.
Do you think one of those briefings could be June 23rd, or that's only a week from now? Are we looking out farther than that?
I think we were thinking the first meeting in July, and maybe we can absolutely move the foreign trade zone and art space to make room. So, why don't we plan?
If we're, and I don't wanna diminish the importance of it at all, but in order for the finance department to have good, complete financials through the end of June, I don't see how they could possibly do that early July.
So can we target July 28th for that?
Or the first part of August, yeah.
For the first one, because we're trying to get 4 in before budget planning,
Yes.
at least.
Yeah.
We should.
Okay, I will work with the team. It will either be July 28th or August 11th, depending on capacity.
But maybe we have to keep that here on the left side so it doesn't keep falling off.
Yeah.
Something gets moved around.
Yeah, my apologies for that.
The other thing Emily and Tabor wanted help with was the presentation or introduction to our concert series, and they said it was this Friday, also the 27th and the 11th. I told them I would bring it up in this time.
Just want a commissioner to kick off the concert.
So maybe if you wanna do one of those, reach out to Tabor.
Yeah.
Or however you wanna manage that. I don't want us to have to schedule right here, but are you able
What
to
were the
do?
dates?
This Friday. And then the 27th. Then the 11th of July.
I'd like to do this Friday. Right? It's the only one I can.
You get the ABBA cover band.
That's rad.
I can cover one of the other ones.
Okay. Commissioners. Commissioner Harding, I feel like there was something you asked for that I re-upped in private agenda thing that I'm not seeing here.
Forgot.
Oh, it was.
Oh, yeah, we talked about that and I'm less hot to trot on that.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, and the real estate. Well, then I don't think that was it. I think it was, sorry.
That got moved. No, but for the POCAC meeting on July 15th, is someone attending that? Here, what did we decide?
I will not be attending that.
I don't think a decision has been made. yet.
Okay, so once we decide.
Maybe after tomorrow's meeting.
Key.
Yeah.
What's key about that?
Oh,
Oh, right, that's our new thing.
I think once they have more clear direction, it'll really help. After this.
As we move
Agree.
towards budgeting, just thinking like Commissioner Isle a little bit. I've heard some gesturing about the idea that we've got the real estate that supports the airport. And then there's the real estate that's like here-ish. And someone has mentioned, should that be sort of thought of as supporting kind of operations down here? That's a big decision point in terms of how we organize and talk about the budget. Mr. Isle, is that something we're interested in making an up or down decision about as a commission, or leaving it to staff discretion how they organize those things?
Well, I'd certainly be open to hearing the staff recommendation. But,
And the concept is to actually, we've got districts under the comprehensive scheme of harbor improvements. And so the market district would be, the revenue from that would support the marine terminal. And it makes sense because the market district actually the marine terminal is part of it. And then North Point would support the marina. I think East Bay, we're still trying to figure out what East Bay would support. Yeah,
I
that's
like
the-
that idea.
That's the idea. So, and I think the thought was we'd sort of play that out a little bit, sort of flesh out what that would sort of look like budgetarily. Just so you get an understanding what that would mean for sort of, if it's considered to be, say, a revenue for the marine terminal for their bottom line.
So would you see that as sort of an October level in the
We'd
budget?
love to do that. I honestly would love to do an August retreat on budget, on the 2026 budget. So spend July just grounding you all on the business lines, revenue generation. August, have a retreat on the budget, and that's where we would think you can try to discuss that.
Can I ask you to bring us sort of the
A calendar,
timeline
yes.
calendar for
I have,
budget work?
yeah, I've asked for that from our team and it's coming this week. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So we will get an update from you on that at the June 23rd meeting?
I can also just send you
Just
all
send
the
it.
calendar along with the weekly report this week.
Can I just throw out there that
Yeah.
I'm going to be out of town and out of touch from August 15th through the 26th.
I like it.
What are you gonna go do?
And then after that's Labor Day. So if you're looking at a
Yep.
retreat, it sounds like
Gotta go before the 14th. So to me, that says June 8th, the discussion of the business lines, and then between August 1st and 14th, so retreating.
You look at your times and tell us.
Okay.
and I cannot do the 14th, so there's a down to the 13th if you last day.
Sheesh. Okay. Okay, all right.
It is actually that level of planning once it's.
I know.
Yeah.
It's August,
So-
yeah. Yeah, totally appreciate that.
After you adjourn, I'm gonna say something.
Okay. I'm going to adjourn. Missy, let us know when we're adjourned.
Anyone that likes puppies and would like to be included in a photo, they're outside. And no, my friend, I help her get them adopted.
Oh.
And I think a picture with us would be like good way to, I
Commissioner
mean,
recruitment.
we puppies and babies, politics, I don't know. But if you would like to be in the picture with
That
the
is
puppies,
amazing.